had a cold open for this, and yesterday where I was like, I need to remember this, and it's gone. It's out of my brain. I fell asleep last night and it left. So now I don't know
you need to do. You need to program your action button to be a voice memo. So all you just like Inspector Gadget it. Just be like, cold open idea for the podcast.
We give me at some point in the show 30 seconds to do my camera control rant, because I can't write about it for the site. There's no Android angle to it.
Absolutely, you can.
I don't have an Android angle to it. No,
it doesn't need to have an Android angle. Does not.
It does need to have an Android angle. I'm the phones editor. I decide it has to have an Android angle.
I think that's dumb, personally. I think if
I'm
it's
still going to do my 30-second rant.
Sure, but if it's a good take, you should write it. Nobody's gonna.
It's a good take. It's just a very Apple-centric take.
That's fine. Don't no. Nobody's. It's. I think you should do it. I'm ordering you to do it.
Yeah, I guess if I just publish it direct, no one can stop me, right? Sometimes I think about that when I'm annoyed at you for yelling at me about Lost. I'm like, I could just write my manifesto, publish it to the site. He can't stop me. You've got 4 sites to manage or whatever. You're not going to notice for hours. Think about how many people could read it by then.
You're right. It's going to go viral on an Android site within the first 2 hours of publication.
That's what I'm saying.
Hello and welcome to the Android Police podcast. My name is Daniel Bader. This week on the show, we're talking all the rest of the Google products that the company announced back in August. So it's been a trickle of reviews over the last few weeks. We had the phones, we had the watch. Now we have the Pixel Buds Pro 2, not the Pixel Buds 2 Pro, and the TV streamer. So those are 2 products that exist in the world, and I'm desperate to find some takes on this, because so many people twisted themselves in knots this week trying to find takes for both of these products. And my take is that these are the most disappointing of all of the products that Google has announced, and I think Google knew that, which is why it basically just let the hype die down before they were released and reviewable. But we can get into it. And then there's a grab bag of other stuff. We cannot not talk about MKBHD's panel app disaster, I would say. I will also say that we're not going to spend the podcast just like crapping on it, because I don't think that's productive. What I would like to talk about is more of the sort of parasocial realities of why people felt so entitled to just try to cancel or dump on this person who has done nothing but good things for this industry for the last 15 years.
We'll get to it, but alternatively, also lots of comments being like, how could he do this? And it's like, you don't know him, right? So like, we'll get to it. But yeah, I also have parasocial.
I mean, that's the other thing too, which is important to say, is that the person you see on YouTube, not necessarily the person who is behind the scenes.
I mean that in a bad way either. I want to be clear. It's just that, like,
true. I mean, we're the same. We're the same, right? Like, you actually hate Lost, and this is just your your persona that you're.
I mean, I don't want to get too far into it, but you could make the same conversation. No one listening to this, very few people listening to this know you or I personally, right? Like, you don't know who we are off mic. Now, granted, it's true, I hate Lost, but like, here I'm playing a character named Will Sattelberg who loves Lost,
and I'm playing a character named John Locke.
There we go.
Based on a philosopher that you should read.
Stupid. Do you want to get into it? Let's get into it. I want to talk about the TV streamer.
Yeah, please. Okay, so this one's interesting, right? I think the most interesting thing about this is that Taylor actually managed to take beautiful photos of a set-top box.
Stunning.
Somehow.
How does he do it every time?
I don't know. I have no idea. We have to force Taylor to come on the show once just to explain how he's so good at taking photos of static objects. And when I do the same thing, they look like I took it with a potato.
Yeah.
Don't understand. But
one time he just told me to buy more throw blankets.
Right. That'll fix everything. So yeah, this TV streamer. So this is the successor to the Chromecast. And every single review basically that I read, including AP's. But although AP hasn't published its review yet, Taylor said that he had to spend more time with it. He only had about 4 days with the product before the review embargo lifted.
He was off for like 3 of them. Like it arrived to his house like a day before he had a scheduled vacation.
But that being said, what he says in his impressions aligns with what a lot of other sites say in their final review, which is that it is extremely good at being a set-top box, and that there are some additions to the software that are useful, such as smart home integration. But ultimately, this is not a massive change from the Chromecast with Google TV. And then there's the added frustration of it being more expensive than that product and not coming with an HDMI cable in the box, to which one would logically reply, no other set-top box comes with an HDMI cable, to which smart, demure people would reply, Google never had to because the Chromecast was a dongle.
Yeah.
So nobody thought about it, but it just had one.
This product might have one of the worst like first impressions of anything I've unboxed this year, because not only does it not come with an HDMI cable, which even me, like someone who I have dozens of spare HDMI cables, I just kind of assumed the box would have one in it, and so I took it upstairs to because it was going to go in the bedroom, and I unboxed it there, and I was like, okay, like I'll plug it in, and then I was like, oh, it's not here. I need to go back and look for an HDMI cable downstairs because there was not a spare one in my bedroom. But even before that, and this is mentioned in Taylor's hands-on, but the box is packed inside out. So if you just open it the way you would expect to open any other package, it will fall out of the box because it's packed in a way that it's facing outwards towards the back of the box with nothing holding it in, or at least I didn't have anything holding it in. And I think there should be an adhesive maybe, but mine did not have that. And so it just fell. I actually think I opened it first on my desk and then took it upstairs, but it just I opened the box the way that I thought I should. And the cable, the power adapter, and the Chromecast or the Google TV streamer itself just fell onto my desk.
So weird.
Which is not great. It's a really weird box design. I know that's like a nitpick, but again, if we're talking first impressions, you should make it so that the unboxing experience is nice. And it's strange because the rest of this lineup, I have found that Google's boxes this year are they're all redesigned and they're all very thoughtfully designed, and
that's what I was going to say. Every Google product that I've received, which happens to be all of them except the TV streamer,
but this one,
have beautiful kind of minimal boxes that feel thoughtful, right? Every part of it felt very thoughtful. So yeah, this is surprising. Although to be fair, it does feel like the TV streamer was separate, right?
Yes, a little bit.
As a product, as a marketing, as part of the marketing strategy, as maybe part of a different team, it did feel a little bit separate this year.
So, although the box is very similar, it's the same kind of, and we're a video podcast now, so I'm going to do this. So the box looks like this, right? This is the front of the box. It opens this way, and you pull it up. But if you pull it up, there's where the Chromecast or the Google TV, I'm going to keep doing that, the Google TV streamer goes. So if you were to just pull it out, assuming that it would be in here, it's not. It's in here, and it's going to fall out of the back. So you need to open it upside down in order to not damage your set-top box, which, by the way, because it's a set-top box, you don't want it to be cosmetically damaged. You're probably going to see it on your TV stand or whatever. It's not going to be hidden behind your TV. Very silly. Same with the HDMI cable. They're selling an HDMI cable on the Google store for $20 that if you buy one of these, you can get for $10, which is not a great deal. It's very easy to get an HDMI cable from Amazon for $10 these days. I have bought 10-foot HDMI cables for $4 on Amazon before.
Well, if you go to Alibaba, AliExpress rather.
AliExpress.
You can get 800 HDMI cables for $4.
this would be complicated through Best Buy or Amazon, but personally, I think Google should have just given the option at checkout through their store. If you are buying a Google TV streamer, do you want a free HDMI cable at checkout? It is a one-time offer. I do not think it would have cost them very much money. They could have shipped it in the box with the device, like in the package, like separate. But people buying this thing are upgrading from either a Chromecast or something like a Fire TV stick, or just their own smart TV stuff. They might not have an HDMI cable, and it's it might sound like we're hung up on it, but it's a strange first experience, I guess.
I would say most people have an HDMI cable. Very few people have a spare HDMI cable.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like,
and
spare.
Can you imagine like the frustration of buying this thing, getting it, unboxing it, and then realizing that you have to go to a store or wait until the next day for it to actually work? Like, that almost undermines the whole excitement of opening a brand new product. And yeah, I mean, it's such an easy thing that Google could have done to just say, hey, like, we sell this thing too. Yeah, you're getting a $10 discount or whatever, but do you want to just add this to your cart?
Right. Yeah.
So such a miss, and such a Google style miss as well. I just don't think another company would have done that. Like, no, I'm not saying other companies would have included the HDMI cable in the box, but there would have been that thoughtfulness as part of the retail experience to just be like, hey, like, do you want this thing? We'll give it to you at a discount.
The other main set-top box, right, on the market today is the Apple TV. The Apple TV does not come with an HDMI cable in the box, but it never has, and it's always been a set-top box. And the Apple TV has been around in some form for, coming up on a decade. But if we want to think about how we think about tvOS, since like 2010, 2011. So 15 years of that, right? And so people buying an Apple TV now are probably upgrading from an older Apple TV and have that HDMI cable already there. That, I think, is the difference between upgrading from a Chromecast versus an older set-top box.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right. Like, I think Google said itself that it wanted people to, this is a product for folks who either don't have a set-top box already or are upgrading from a Chromecast, right? They're not trying to take market share away from the NVIDIA Shield or the Apple TV. And it's not priced to take away market share from those products. But I think like a lot of folks in their reviews said that this is still not as good an experience as the NVIDIA Shield. It's not as good an experience as the Apple TV 4K. And Google is sort of leaning into that a little bit. It's only $100, right? You're not going to get a ton. But I think the question is it a better experience than what comes built into your LG or Samsung TV? And is it a better experience than an older Chromecast or a Chromecast with Google TV? And most of the reviews have said yes. They've said there is a clear line between the two, that the 22% performance increase that Google promised is seen in the day-to-day usage of the thing. And that some of the Google TV additions, while, Taylor said it perfectly, he said it feels a little bit more bloated. Overall, I think because it's a faster performer, it feels a little bit more of a complete product out of the gate. And I'm still skeptical because we did say the same thing about the Chromecast with Google TV, and then it took a few months for that bogginess to kick in. But it's unlikely for that to happen here because there's more RAM, there's more storage. It's just a better, more mature product.
The reason I've been frustrated with the reviews that we've seen this week is because I personally don't have faith that this product will be as fast as it feels right now in 6 months, because I got burned by the Chromecast, and I cannot put my faith in this device right now and be like, you should run out and buy it if you like Google TV, because I think everyone should wait like 6 months to see how like review units and early adopters are like dealing with this device, because I don't think the storage issue will be a problem. This has what, 32 gigabytes, I believe. Mm-hmm. But speed could still be an issue. This could get bogged down by, oh, you've installed 15 apps. Like, sorry, but like it's sluggish now, right? I don't know. I don't think Google has, following the Chromecast with Google TV, has like earned the benefit of the doubt here in terms of knowing how it's going to perform in 6 months to a year, which is about how long it took for my Chromecast experience to become unusable without a factory reset. The other thing is that, as you said, Google TV is like not great. Like, it's really bloated. I don't think the recommendations it gives are personalized as much as it wants me to think they are. Taylor points out that like a lot of his top picks for you was content pulled from Pluto TV, which he didn't have installed.
Right.
The apps that he did have installed, like Netflix and Max and Disney Plus, were not like, things were not showing up in that selection from that app, which makes the entire thing feel, if not sponsored, certainly like skewed towards like Google's direct partners. It's like not a very good software experience when all I really want is like a grid of apps, and you can turn on apps only mode, but I've been trying to give Taylor my own feedback as he's been working on his review, and both of us are like, well, we can't do that during the review because half of the experience, if not more, is using Google TV the way Google wants you to. For a device that is only $30 less than the Apple TV, it feels significantly less premium because of how much it wants you to watch stuff that is, in some cases is sponsored, right? Like a lot of times the main card on my home screen says sponsored on it. I find the whole thing a little frustrating when I'm not within an app, I guess.
I suppose the question or the important consideration there is, are the recommendations actually good? Because I don't
For me,
care
they're not.
Right. Like if it was pulling up Pluto TV recommendations that I would enjoy watching based on other stuff that I've seen on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, then great. But if they're just pushing stuff on fast services because they have an ad revenue share, then that's skeezy and something that I don't really want, and I'm probably willing to spend more to avoid. And the thing is that really, like, what's the alternative? Because Roku now does the same thing. Amazon now does the same thing. And then all of the native smart TV OSs like Samsung's Tizen or LG's WebOS, they all do the same thing. I mean, I cannot use my LG OLED for more than a couple of days without a pop-up from the TV interface taking over Apple TV and forcing me to find the remote somewhere and dismiss it or agree to a new terms of service that is probably sucking up all of the usage data and selling it to another third-party provider.
You gotta get that off your Wi-Fi, I think, is the key. Like, I'm not even kidding.
You're probably right. That's the thing, is that I don't ever use anything on that television, right? Like I use my Apple
using
TV
stuff plugged into it. Exactly.
Through HDMI-C to turn on the television, turn it off. The remote talks directly to my Sonos Arc through HDMI Arc. Like, the TV is just a dumb pipe for all intents and purposes. And yet until you mentioned that, I'm like, oh yeah, wow, I didn't actually consider that. But that's the issue, is like the Apple TV feels like the only one that does not throw ads in your face, even though it kind of throws ads in your face if you really squint hard enough, because it sends Apple TV Plus recommendations all the time.
Only if you roll over the app, though, which is not terrible. I also have an Apple TV because I got frustrated with for the reasons you just said, every other streaming device. I felt frustrated. We were using a Fire TV stick in the bedroom. That's what was replaced by this new TV streamer. But in the living room where we watch 90% of TV and movies, it was an Apple TV that I had lying around where I was like, okay, like I'm plugging this in, even though it doesn't talk directly to my phone 90% of the time. And like, honestly, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't really need to ever like stream stuff from my phone. And if you need to, you can link your Android phone like with YouTube or whatever on it. It's just a little more cumbersome, but it's not terrible. When I turn on the same way you do, I grab the Apple TV remote and turn on the TV using that button. It's always on the home screen, but it's over whatever app I was last using, which is never the Apple TV app. It's usually opens on the full grid of icons and not the like top section where you will see those, like, for lack of a better word, like banner ads taking up the full screen in the way Google TV does. So it's like almost never a problem for me because I'm never in that top row unless I'm going to like the iTunes store, right? Like to rent a movie or something. Otherwise, like I'm in Netflix or Hulu, and those are all in just the main grid, and it's clean, and you just jump through apps. It's not sluggish. It's very quick because it's running on an iPhone like 12 processor or something. I don't remember which chip is in it, but it's just a completely different experience, and it's the only platform that is offering that.
Exactly. And not to say that I prefer Apple TV's interface over Google TV.
It's just a grid of apps. It's nothing fancy.
It's nothing fancy. And at this point, it's just like personal preference. It's kind of like the difference between CarPlay and Android Auto. Like I like elements of both. I think Android Auto is ultimately a better experience.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
There's very little between them these days. And one could say the same of basically any smart TV interface because it is just a grid of apps. The problem comes in when companies like Roku or even Google are subsidizing the low cost of the hardware with ads. And then you get the impression that like you're no longer buying a product, you become a little bit of the product too by buying a $100 set-top box versus a $150 set-top box. I mean, Roku just this week released a new version of the Roku Ultra 4K. Main upgrades there are Wi-Fi 6 and a couple of other smaller improvements to the hardware, faster processor as well. But everybody now I speak to is like, I hate Roku because it just throws ads in your face. And if I'm going to do that, I might as well buy the $30 HDMI dongle because it's a slightly better experience over the native experience on my TV. And if I'm going to spend $100, it's not going to be for a Roku. It's going to be for something that is actually powerful enough, like an NVIDIA Shield or an Apple TV.
Well, and so that's why I don't want to make excuses for this product, right? Because it was one thing when the Chromecast with Google TV 4K was $50 and the 1080p one was $30, I think. We are talking about a $100 device that is not that much of an upgrade over the Chromecast, the 3-year-old Chromecast, right? Like 22% faster performance. The chipset we have not gotten, like Google would not confirm with us what chipset was in it, but like what we have heard is that it is the MediaTek MT8696, which was in the Fire TV Stick 4K Max that I reviewed 3 years ago, and that was, I'm sorry, the Chromecast was 4 years ago. I keep forgetting it was 2020, not 2021. But I reviewed it 3 years ago, this Fire TV Stick, and it was the one that was in the bedroom up until, a week and a half ago when I switched it with the Chromecast. That chip performs fine, but that device was, $50 or $60 and is constantly on sale. And went on sale, went up for order 3 years ago. I don't know why this device is $100, I guess is the point I'm getting at. You get so much more for paying $30 more for an Apple TV. And it is an experience that, yes, we have acknowledged Apple will show you ads for Apple TV Plus content when you roll over the Apple TV app, which is also how you get to the iTunes store. But otherwise, it does not feel subsidized in any way. It's a bit of a double standard on Apple's part, but you can very easily ignore it. And it's smooth and speedy, and I have not thought about upgrading that thing once, and I think it's a 4-year-old model at this point. And I bet it lasts another 4 years. To me it's just this TV streamer is just not enough for both how long it took to get and what they're asking for.
That being said, I think the axiom of only reviewing the thing that's in front of you is also important, right? It's
Sure.
the flip side of don't review products based on promises of future updates. I agree with you in theory, right? We have trauma from the previous Chromecast that
I do have a little bit
carried
of
over
traumas.
here.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's a reason most folks are giving this an 8 or 9 because once it's set up, the out-of-box experience is largely positive. And what's the point of dinging it for something that it hasn't done yet? And I think that's
100%
part, not an issue with this product, but an issue with the ecosystem of product reviews. is that most companies or most publications don't revisit old products because they don't have the resources. And this is something that when I've been an EIC of a tech site, like I've tried to implement on a regular basis, is it's not useful to review a Pixel 9 on day one and then just never talk about it again, because Google's products change, software updates change the experience, and then
sometimes they break the experience.
Exactly. And then they end up getting so different that we end up not really respecting the audience that's still looking for a product review, because the thing that you're reading is no longer true. It's no longer a review of the product as it is today. And it even stands to reason that if you buy a Pixel 8 and you've read a review from 2023 that launched with Android 13, oh, sorry, no, it launched with Android 14, but maybe it's on an earlier version, it hasn't gone through the security patches because it's still new in box. You take it out of the box, Google's not going to let you use it until you update that phone, right? So it does make a meaningful difference to revisit products later on. But our responsibility is to review the thing that we have in front of us. And for better or worse, Google's set-top boxes make a pretty good first impression, lack of HDMI cable aside, and tend to bog down over time, because that has been our reality. But yeah, I mean, we can't ding it now for something that it's not doing yet.
No, I'm mostly dinging it for the Google TV experience just in general being a little lacking, or a little not feeling up to the premium that Google is asking for. But I do want to shout out two other things, I guess, that are like you will experience if you buy this product right now, which I still think you should wait 6 months, but neither here nor there. The remote is different. It's longer. I don't find it as comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It feels kind of awkward in my hand, like something about the longer shape while still keeping the curved backside. I'm constantly having to reposition it in my hand. It's not like a con, but they botched it compared to a Chromecast with Google TV remote, which I found very comfortable. I think they should have kept the volume buttons on the side, personally. That said, the other big feature with this is smart home controls. Now, those are coming to the Chromecast with Google TV. They're great. Like, I didn't think I would use them as much as I have been using them, but the ability to turn off, like, our bedroom lights from the TV that is on, like, as we are, like, slowly getting ready for bed on, like, a Saturday night, but we're still, like, watching the end of a movie or something, is great. It's really nice to be able to not, like, have to reach for my phone or something, and instead you just quickly do it from, like, a slide-in menu in the UI. Like, I think that was a really smart idea on Google's part.
So that's one that I don't quite understand, because I always have my phone with me when I'm watching something.
It's next to me, right? But like I if I don't want to, like, I don't know. It is a small thing, but I think it is nice. It's the same thing as, like, if you have cameras or whatever, you can view them from there. I'm less interested in that, but I don't know. I think it is a nice quality of life improvement to not have to, like, be like, you know what? I don't like that this light's on right now, or I wish it was dimmer or something. Let me turn it off or dim it, and you can just do it from the TV when you probably have the remote more. I mean, I don't know, Daniel, maybe you're playing Subway Surfers while you're watching. Maybe that's why you didn't like Lost. You were playing Subway Surfers the whole time.
I was. Between 2004 and 2010, I was playing Subway Surfers on my Pixel
on your
phone.
iPhone 16 Pro Max, right?
Exactly. Because I am a flash forwarder, right? So I went forward in time, got the phone.
The Lost knockoffs, we should have a conversation about that sometime. Because if you think Lost is bad, we should talk about the Lost knockoffs.
Which ones? Oh, I'm curious. What do you consider
like
a Lost
Forward.
knockoff? Sorry?
Do you remember the show Flash Forward?
No.
At the canceled NBC show? Oh my god, I can't spell. There we go. Flash Forward. 2009, aired on ABC. So they were trying to, come up with the next Lost, and it is about everyone on October 6th sees their lives on April 29th, 2010, which is 6 months into the future, and some people are dead in the future, and some people are, like, murdering other people in the future, and it's a mystery, and it lasted 1 season, and it wasn't very good. It's based on a novel by a Canadian science fiction writer. Look at that.
My God, I've read that
Your
book.
People.
It's called Robert Sawyer. Yes, obviously.
Yeah.
I like you mentioned the name, and I was like, why do I know that name? I never watched the show, but I remember this because Robert Sawyer is actually one of my favorite sci-fi authors, and I've met him before.
Yeah.
And
There we go.
I have a weird story about that, actually, if you're willing to indulge me. So in 1990,
this show is nothing if not indulgence.
if it exactly, in 1998, I want to say, when was I in grade 10? How old are you in grade 10? 15, right? Or 16? So 2001.
15 to 16.
Yeah, it's 2001. I am doing this project for school, and they asked you to reach out to somebody to interview them. I think it was for an English class or a civics class or something. And I had this idea of reaching out to Robert Sawyer, who I loved. His book Starplex, which was from 1996, was like one of my favorite hard sci-fi novels. And I knew that he lived in Toronto. So I emailed him, and he got back to me, and he's like, I would love to, but I'm in the process of moving. He was moving from an apartment to a house. And if you'd like to do the interview, like, I can accommodate you, but you have to come to my apartment to do the interview. And I think in retrospect, that was probably not a great idea. I mean, obviously my mom was with me, but like, this guy invites a 16-year-old to his apartment. Not a great idea in retrospect, but I did it. It was fine. He was lovely, and my mom was there the whole time, so it was good. But at the end of it, he was like, "Hey, I'm moving. Would you like these 6 boxes of some of my favorite sci-fi novels that I cannot bring with me?" So I leave that interview not only with like a lifelong memory of interviewing my favorite sci-fi author, but I now have all of these like Asimov and other novels that I'd never read, but I'd always heard of, and I still have them. They're at my mom's house in the basement on a bookshelf somewhere, and I'm so grateful. And then randomly, this is so weird, but a few weeks ago I reached out to Sawyer because he had overseen sort of archiving of an old MS-DOS app called WordStar. So WordStar was this like early DOS-based word processor that apparently he used to do all of his writing on until recently.
On the Wikipedia page. Yeah.
Same with George Martin. He wrote a bunch of his Game of Thrones books on WordStar.
Says he was still using it as of 2020, George R. R. Martin, according to Wikipedia.
So this is wild because Sawyer, he's just like a fan of making sure that software is available in perpetuity, and this one in particular he had a close connection to. So he undertook this process of archiving the app, and I reached out to him for an interview 20-ish years later, and he was like, "Yeah, of course I remember you. That's great." So
that's really cool.
I was like such a wild thing, and I was so grateful to him for getting back to me. But anyway, long story short, I have a huge amount of affection for Robert J. Sawyer. You should read all of his books, especially the Hominids trilogy, which is excellent. But where were we? We were talking about Flash Forward, the show. So no, I didn't watch that because I had read the book, and I think the book is always better. It's my long-winded answer.
Should I read the book though? Like, is Flash Forward the book good?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it's like pretty hard sci-fi. It's very different, I'm sure, from the show. Most of his books are quite like high concept. But as with a lot of it, I think Andy Weir is a really good example of this. When you have an author that really fixates on sort of high concept sci-fi with a lot of world building, the character development is what ends up lacking. And my main criticism of folks like Andy Weir and Robert Sawyer is that their characters, and in particularly the dialogue of between characters, feels extremely stilted, a little bit adolescent, and just not natural. Whereas, I just read The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey, who wrote the Expanse series. And this was very different from that. This was much less plot focused and much more character focused. And I really enjoyed that part of it. So I guess we're just doing the stuff we liked early on in the show this week. But
yeah, why not?
Why not?
It was a perfect segue.
All right, let's talk about the Pixel Buds Pro 2. So Sarah Jikis, our trainer, editor,
lead editor and trainer is her bio on Android, please.
Woman of all trades. She does everything for us. She's also a huge Pixel Buds fan. Reviewed the Buds 2 Pro. Had a lot of good things to say about it. Similar to the rest of the industry, right? These are meaningful improvements,
yes,
but like the TV streamer, not nearly as significant as the previous generation. And in fact, it sounds like, based on my own experience using it short term and a few of the reviews that I've read and watched, there are a few regressions as well that we can get into. First of all, have you used them?
No, this is the one product that Google announced this like summer/fall that I have not used.
I was a big fan of the Pixel Buds, the original Pixel Buds, until they just crapped out. Like, I'm not talking about the 2018.
Okay, I was gonna say you might be the only person.
No. The neck buds were trash. Nobody ever used those or liked them. I'm talking about the 2020 Pixel Buds that were standalone, looked exactly the same as the Pixel Buds Pro and Pixel Buds A series, but just had major connection problems.
Yes.
Were completely unreliable. Ended up basically they released a whole bunch of software updates to fix the problem, and nothing happened because it was a hardware. Obviously, in retrospect, it was a hardware failure. So the Pixel Buds were in theory very good. The gesture controls were excellent. They were very comfortable. Hey G integration was good. And then the Pixel Buds Pro came out in 2022. A market improvement in sound quality. They added ANC, and in general, we're just like a much more mature product, but were criticized for not having great sound quality. And at the time, Google did not have a proper equalizer, so you could not really mess with the frequency response of these earbuds. They did eventually add it, and a bunch of other features, conversation awareness, things like that. But these were not audiophile grade earbuds, right? They were comfortable pixel optimized earbuds. Some people found them uncomfortable because they were circular. They didn't fit in people's ears very well. Depended on your ear shape, right? So Pixel Buds Pro 2 are significantly smaller.
Yes.
And and they have a little wingtip that brings back some of that stability. So I find them to be very comfortable. Conversely, because they're much lighter, it's easier to push them when you're doing the gestures out of alignment in your ear, right? So I found that, at least in the short term, you have to be much more delicate with the gestures that you're using. And also, because they're smaller, the touch area for those gestures is smaller. So yeah, you have to be more precise. It's a bit annoying, actually, because you have to be both more delicate and more precise, and you don't always want to do that. Sound quality is good, but not excellent. Like, out of the box, I could tell these are not going to rival most of the high-end earbuds that I own.
I can tell you, Sarah DM'd me as she was unboxing them, and her initial impression was that they sounded bad until she like went in and tuned them in the EQ. She was not a fan of how they sounded out of the box, and I've seen that from other reviews as well, that particularly like bass is really lacking if you are not going to go in and like tune how these sound.
Yeah, I would say the bass boost equalization option is probably a good place to start, and then you can adjust from there. But I find the buds sound to be like pleasant, but nothing that I would recommend for music listening. In fact, what I always loved about the Pixel Buds, and this is true of the Buds 2 Pro, the Buds Pro 2, is that Google really does a good job optimizing voice playback. So when you're listening to an audiobook or a podcast, this podcast in particular, there's a timbre and a resonance and just like a fullness to the voice that I find really pleasant. And I just think these are so good to wear as individual earbuds. And the other thing too that I like is if you're a mono earbud listener, you get to choose which earbuds get which features by like tapping or long pressing or double tapping, things like that. And the other part of it is they don't really stick out of your ear very much. So they're pretty low profile, much lower profile than most of the other stem-based earbuds that were recently announced. So yeah, if you're kind of looking for something that is not going to draw a lot of attention, you know, unless you're using like the mint green or pink ones, which obviously add a dash of color, which I can talk about separately. Like these are very, very low pro. And yeah, I really like them. Conversely, I'm not a huge fan of the Gemini integration. I find that it really doesn't add anything to the experience. You know, replacing Google Assistant with Gemini. Gemini Live on this thing is just a wasted opportunity, as many reviewers have pointed out, right? Having the ability to activate Gemini Live would be great if Gemini Live could actually do anything on your phone. Yeah. But it can't, because it's just a line directly to Gemini. It has no context at all. So that's unfortunate, and I think that'll hopefully change over time. And honestly, like I find the case too big for the size of the earbuds. Like obviously they added they have like a bigger battery, and the battery lasts longer. You get 30 hours with the case. But I don't know. I just think that the size of the case could have gone down a little bit, and
it's like identical to last gen. Like they did not, as much as they shrank the buds themselves. Like it, you know, there are in Sarah's review, there are photos of her last gen Pixel Buds Pro next to the new ones, and like, you know, if you squint, you're like, yeah, I guess maybe it's a little smaller, but like it's, you know, 2% smaller maybe. Like it really does not make much of an impact.
Yeah, so two things there. One is bigger battery, and they now have Find My abilities as well as a speaker. So that's, I think, one of the reasons Google just put more tech inside the case. But again, I don't know if the trade-off is worth it. I mean, it's not like this case is big. It's not.
No, but like you want it to be as small as possible.
It just feels disproportionate to the size of the earbuds. I don't know. I mean, that is what it is. A couple things beyond sound quality. ANC is really good. It's a lot better than the original Pixel Buds Pro. That being said, they're not as good as at blocking out kind of like mid-range noise as the recent crop of other high-end earbuds. AirPods Pro 2, Sony XM or WF-1000 XM5, Sony Bose QC Ultras. For $229, I would have expected better ANC. It's possible that it'll get better over time because there's a Tensor A1 chip in here that I suppose could get updated with better performance. Who knows? The flip side of that is the transparency mode, which I hated on the original Pixel Buds Pro, is so much better here. Like night and day difference. So they must have improved the microphones to some extent, and I'll get into why I don't think it's necessarily, well, it's hard to say, and I'd like your take on this, but the transparency mode is tremendous, right? It doesn't feel like it's amplifying the outside world to an uncomfortable degree. However, the microphones, when you're on calls, the ability to cut out external noise, if you watch any of the video reviews, is worse, like markedly worse than on the original Pixel Buds. So what I think is happening here is that the mics are too sensitive, because if you watch some of the reviews where they're talking in a quiet room, the pickup on the mic is actually better than the Pixel Buds Pro. You start adding ambient noise or fan noise or something like that, it starts cutting out. And I think what's happened here is that the tuning for these more sensitive microphones has not been dialed back when it's detecting a significant increase in ambient noise or targeted noise, such as a fan, right? And it just means that with greater power comes greater responsibility, right? Google didn't do the right job QAing loud or like direct acute noises when it comes to cutting that noise and isolating it. So that's why I hope that there will be improvements to both the ANC and the microphone quality, because I think that the quality of the actual hardware is better, but it just is not translating yet to.
It's a tuning issue.
I think it's a tuning issue. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like Google is like decent at supporting their Pixel Buds with updates. So like I would expect for these to get upgrades down the road. But obviously, as you said with the Google TV streamer, you can only review what's there today.
Yeah. Yeah, and then finally, like on-ear battery life, like I've only had them a day and a half, so I have no idea, but it supports wireless charging, 8 to 9 hours of use with ANC off, 7 with ANC on. Very easy onboarding experience with Fast Pair. You do get a few things when you're a Pixel user that you don't get with other devices. There's the high bandwidth call codec, as well as I think 1 or 2 other minor features, but nothing egregious that like you're going to want to buy a Pixel phone to use these with. And then I think the last thing that I will say on this is it's $229. It only supports ANC and SBC codecs.
Yeah.
This is a real nitpick, but it should support Qualcomm's aptX adaptive. Like at the very least, I'm not looking for high-end LDAC style support here, right? Even though LDAC is built into Android and it should just be there if you want a high-end codec. But like, just pay Qualcomm the freaking license, dude. Like, just do it. I don't know. It just feels, I don't know. AAC just feels lackluster in 2024, and there are better options. It's unclear if it supports LC3 codec, but Google has not said anything. So I'm hoping
Probably
that with a
not.
future update, it'll enable
maybe with
it,
an
but
update,
I doubt it.
Not out of the box. Just it's one of those things where like if the support's there, they usually will talk about it.
You know what's funny? I was using the OnePlus Buds 3 Pro with the Motorola Moto Razr Plus, and I realized that it was connected to that phone with the LHDC codec that OnePlus touts as like its high-end lossless codec. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went to the LHDC website, and it turns out that like basically Motorola, OnePlus, and a whole bunch of Chinese brands are the only ones that support it.
That's funny.
It's very weird. But I was kind of happy that randomly this high-end lossless codec was supported on this foldable. Not expecting that. All right, that's the Buds 2 Pro. What I would like to know, if you can email us at podcast@androidpolice.com, is are you interested in either of these products? And if so, why or why not? Especially the TV streamer. If you tell me that you bought this on day one because you just missed having AI screensavers on your TV, like I really need to know who you are.
Daniel, perfect segue. I want to just very quickly just go back to your LG TV experience. You have an LG TV, right? You mentioned this earlier. You have an OLED model, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, great. This was a post published about half an hour ago on The Verge. I just want you to, just to give you more of a drive to go disconnect your TV from Wi-Fi. LG smart TVs have started displaying ads when idle.
Perfect. Love it. Incredible.
You have to go into additional settings to disable the screensaver promotion toggle. It seems like it's rolling out to practically everything, but it is on their new like G4 OLED. So
I have a G3 OLED, so I hope that the software takes a long time to get to me. But I do remember that it interrupted my kids' Bluey watching last week with a pop-up for a new terms of service that I could not dismiss unless I found that remote that I said. So this must have been me agreeing to that. Love it.
Yeah, probably. That's probably what you agreed to.
Also, weird that our friend David Ruddick is now working at LG Ad Solutions as their technology chief. Just
I did
so
not know
weird.
That. I didn't know he was there now.
Congratulations, Dave. I mean, it's weird that he changed his name to Dave Rudnick, but I mean, it must be the same person.
Okay, I see. Sure.
He must be doing this. It's his fault.
It's his fault, yeah. And you can find him on Threads and yell at him, and he'll be very confused.
You can find him in one of his many multi-thread threads. He's really living up to the name. Yes. All right. Speaking of,
I want to spend 30 seconds on these devices.
I want to spend like
too. 4 minutes max, and then we can talk about other things.
That's fine. I will meet you where you are. So there are 3 new products that Samsung has released towards the end of the year: the Galaxy S24 FE, the Galaxy Tab S10 Plus, and Galaxy Tab S10 Ultra. Spend 30 seconds, Will.
Okay, the S24 FE is a $650 like upper mid-range phone that is essentially the size of a S24 Plus, but worse in pretty much every way. You can get the S24 Plus on sale from practically every retailer at this point because it is a 9-month-old phone. Carriers, Samsung itself, I think it's like $200 off right now. Maybe they'll end that promotion now that the S24 FE exists. Who knows? I'll wait for a final review to give judgment, but like I do not know. It's another year of not knowing why this exists or what makes it a fan edition beyond just placement for carrier stores to have a new phone ahead of the holidays. I don't get it. I truly don't. You've tried it, Daniel? Do you have any do you think I'm crazy here?
Okay, so for the price, I don't think this is a bad option. So I will say at $650, there are worse options out there.
That I would agree with.
In terms of fit and finish, right? So I've tried this. It has a very similar design to the S24, but with the sort of flat, matte, brushed aluminum side rails of the Z Fold 6 and Flip 6. So
yes,
and plus the same camera design on the back. So I think it's taken the improved aesthetics of the Z Fold and Z Flip 6 series and brought them over to a cheaper price. The screen is lovely. It's not a symmetrical OLED, but it's close. There's a little bit of a chin. But the OLED's nice. It's a big 6.7-inch 1080p display. It's not an LTPO panel, but it's a good quality Samsung panel. And then, you know, I think about like who this is going after. It's a colorful device. There are 5 colors. There's a yellow and a mint green, which are really nice. There's a subtle blue as well as a black and a silver. I just think like Samsung identifies that its target here is the iPhone 15 or 16 potential buyer who's not really interested in spending $800, but maybe $650 isn't going to turn them off. Or they're a Samsung S20 FE owner or a Galaxy S10 owner who's finally looking to upgrade. And here's a really inexpensive option if you buy it on contract. It's only $20 a month for 2 years versus 40 or 50. And from that perspective, yeah, I totally get it. The issue that I keep coming up against is there's this, I would say, dissolving of the mainline S series that has made this product in particular less relevant. So at $800, the S24 is both a good and bad deal, right? Nobody talks about it. It's just a thing that exists in the world. And like sure. That's just gonna get even more pronounced when they announce the S25 series next year. And
right, which we went off on last week.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately going to look exactly the same as this, if you think about it. So this is the same size, more or less, as the S24 Plus, but $350 less.
But this is my problem: is that it's not right. So it's tricky to compare because they're different storage quantities. But like I'm on Samsung's website right now, and you can get the 256 gigabyte, which is the starter configuration S24 Plus, for $800. No trade-in, just instant $200 off. So we're now talking about, and I understand that's a discount, and it could end in 20 minutes from when we're recording this, but we're talking about $150 difference, and then you factor in the fact that it's got double the storage, right? So you are really going to want to compare the 256 gigabyte S24 FE, which is more expensive. Now we're talking about, less than $100. There are colorful options if you buy through Samsung. You can get it in that orange or the blue or the green. It's got a better display. It's a little smaller because the bezels are slimmer. It's got better cameras. They're not great in my opinion, but it does have better cameras, and so on and so on. And if you're buying through carriers, as you bring up, like Verizon, I'm doing this off memory, but Verizon, I believe, is $5 a month for the S24 Plus with a trade-in. T-Mobile was $8 a month with a trade-in, and AT&T was free with a trade-in. And the trade-in devices that you can use for all those were all like phones that you probably have. It was like most Apple phones, most Samsung phones, most recent Pixels. And to that end, it's like, okay, if you and the carriers, Samsung, are already going to discount the 9-month-old S24 Plus right now, then why does this phone exist? Is my only problem. And I agree with you that like the colors are nice. Could they not just be like, we have new S24 Plus colors?
No, again, like you're right, and also like missing the fundamental part of the equation when it comes to these refresh style or mid-cycle products is that rehashing the S24 Plus or S24 with new colors is still going to mean it's going to have an MSRP. And that MSRP, even if you can get the S24 Plus at $800 without a coupon or anything, like it's still $1,000, right? It's still an $1,000 phone. This will always be $650, and then we'll go down.
Absolutely.
But I just think it also speaks to the fact that like with the A series, for instance, Google at least has an interesting story to tell about.
Yes, I agree.
How it's bringing its hardware and software together at a lower price point, and there's, I think, like a pretty significant aesthetic difference between the high end and low end devices. We haven't seen what the we kind of have seen like what the Pixel 9a will look like, and it looks very different from the previous Pixels in the A series. So did the Pixel 9 compared to the 8. But I think like this is just undifferentiated completely, right?
Yes.
And
right.
That is the iPhone strategy, and it's worked for Apple for many years. But I don't know how easily it works for Samsung, and this is bearing out in the sales of Samsung's phones, which are dropping. The ambivalence that I feel about this product is significant, but at the same time, I'm also not sure I would be able to recommend a different device if your budget was in that $600 to $700 range. Because for all intents and purposes, you're not going to find one with the fit and finish and long-term software support that this will receive.
You're right, because the only other thing I would mention is like the OnePlus 12R, but it is missing both the fit and finish and the long-term support that this phone will get. Like, yeah, I mean, it is cheaper, and it is like potentially more powerful, right? This is running a new Snapdragon, or Exynos 2400E versus the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in the OnePlus 12R, but you know, it's probably a decent enough chip. The Exynos 2400 is totally fine by most accounts. I have not personally used it because it's not really in the US for the most part. But we have talked about this phone for too long. I am bored by it.
Okay, so early October, $650. It'll be available at all the carriers, unlocked, whatever.
Buy it on sale.
Then there are two new tablets, and I think we can spend even less time talking about these.
Absolutely.
So there's
it is a chip difference.
There's no Tab S10 this time.
Buy an S9 or an S9 FE if you're looking for an 11-inch model.
Correct. There's only the 12.6 inch? 4 inch?
12.4 and 14.6, I believe.
So the Tab S10, or the Tab S9 and S10 Plus are huge, and then the Tab S9 and S10 Ultra are bananas because they are wide, like 16 by 9 wide. 16 by 10, but they feel completely unusable in portrait mode at that point. Like, yeah,
the only one of these Galaxy Tabs that I've ever felt was like remotely comfortable in portrait were the 11-inch models. I think once you're past that, and even then it's a little too tall, but once you're past that, it's ridiculous.
Exactly. I mean, I've used this. There are, as you said, like there's one major hardware change. It moved from a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 to a MediaTek Dimensity 9300, which is more powerful. I mean, it's more comparable in performance per clock
The 8
to
Gen 3.
the 8 Gen 3. But again, like, you don't need that amount of power on a tablet like this. They are very expensive. And
$1,000 for the 12-inch model, and I think it's like $1,170 or something for the 15-inch.
yeah, just a huge amount of money. Plus, you do get a stylus in the box, but you don't get the keyboard. Now, there are a couple of changes to the keyboard. There's now 2 keyboards. One has a trackpad and one does not. But both of them now have Samsung AI buttons. So you can quickly pull up Bixby to talk to Samsung
Wonderful.
Bixby if you want, which is definitely worth upgrading for. Other than that, everything is unchanged. They're exactly the same size. Other specs are basically the same. Cameras are the same. Software is the same, right? Like, this is a very iterative update. So if you're that person who wants to spend $1,000 on a Samsung tablet for DeX, it must be DeX. I salute you. I want to know who you are.
I think I DM'd you. Oh, yes, of course. I DM'd you yesterday when you asked me who was spending 1,600 Canadian dollars on a Samsung tablet, and I asked if you forgot that it supports DeX.
It's true. I'm getting one for review, so I'm actually kind of interested, because if they send me the case the keyboard, I will do my best to use it and see what all the fuss is about.
To do your job in DeX. God, good.
And
good,
like,
good
I think
luck.
we talked about this in the past on the show, but like, it's much harder to sell that idea when you have Qualcomm powered ARM based PCs that run proper Windows.
Yes.
And even in emulation at a lower performance, using the full app, the Win32 version of that app, or at least using a proper browser that can, take advantage of web app APIs, is worth the same amount of money. So I don't know.
Let's end on panels. I want to talk about parasocial relationships with YouTubers.
Okay, let's do it. So earlier this week, alongside his iPhone 16 review, MKBHD released an app for iPhone and Android called Panels. It is a wallpaper app that shares the revenue 50-50 between a number of artists and illustrators and himself. Out of the box, there were a number of real red flags here. One is the permissions that were requested, not okay. They were asking for location, they were asking for access to the phone. That, I think, was just like an oversight, right? Like, that somebody just didn't uncheck those boxes when they submitted to the App Store. Stupid, but forgivable. The next
Marques suggested that it was driven by what ad networks suggest, and that they were working on fixing it.
Yeah, I would assume that was probably just like, hey, just leave. Nobody will notice.
Nobody cares. Yeah, everybody just skips through those.
But again, like, I want to give him and his team the benefit of the doubt here. I think ascribing malice to this is not in my nature and not in anybody's best interest. That said, like, we can discuss the specifics. So then, of the many wallpapers that are available at the start, there were 2 ways to access them. One is to watch 2 30-second ads to be able to download the SD or lower quality version, or spend $11 a month or $50 a year to subscribe to Panels Plus, which then gives you indefinite access to all of the wallpapers and any new features in perpetuity in the highest resolution possible. Suffice it to say, people balked at that price.
I think this is the perfect storm of an expensive app with, I don't want to say rogue permissions, but certainly too many permissions, being launched, targeted at a niche audience by Marques's own statement, right? That this is I'm reading his tweet, the target market for this is insanely small. Most people don't download a wallpaper app, right? So this is being launched at Marques Brownlee's audience first and foremost, and then largely speaking, like, tech enthusiasts, right? That pay attention to the permissions they are tapping through when they launch an app. And then also being launched by a popular YouTuber that people have a one-sided parasocial relationship with. A respect, yes, but like, for sure there is, it is the same with podcasts, right? Like people build a relationship with the voices that are coming out of your headphones. And I think that it was the perfect storm for this to be like a media fire, right? Like it was just doomed to be like, it is a lot of money, right? Like people were dunking on the wallpapers in there. Like the one that I saw constantly was that there was just one that was like an orange square. It was just orange. It was called Orange. People went through and realized that the security of the
Rothko made
app
an entire
was,
career basically doing that.
yes, for
who are
sure.
we to
But
judge?
it is different when you were talking about, I think the dunk was less on this is an orange wallpaper and more on when you would hit download on the orange square, it was saying that it was going to give it to you in a low res version unless you paid, when it is just the color orange. So all of that, and then the price, and I just think it was like the perfect storm for this to be targeted back at him. And I think that Marques will recover from this for sure. I don't think this is a long-term problem for his career or his channel. But like, I think this should be a learning lesson for people who are like on the internet and are screaming at him, being like, I thought better of you, which is like, I'm not saying that this is, Marques is some kind of like a scammer, which I have seen suggested. I don't think that's true. I think maybe he over anticipated how much people would be willing to spend on wallpapers, but you don't know who people are in their real lives. Like the idea that this is somehow making people look down on him or disappointing them, I think is like a little silly, in that like this is a person that makes videos you watch. You are not friends with them in the same way that you are not friends with myself or Daniel. Like you don't know who we are in our real lives. Like,
but I want you to be my friend.
I do not want you to be my
want
friend.
you all to be my
unless
friend.
You
I
watch
need
Lost,
you to be my friend.
Case.
I'm desperate for your affection.
Do you know what I'm saying though? Like I think
yes,
this is like
absolutely.
another lesson in being careful about how you think about people online, I suppose. I don't know. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is if this had come out from like Linus Tech Tips or Unbox Therapy, everybody would have been like, yeah, that tracks. But I think the problem was that Marques has been so careful since he started to be as squeaky clean an internet personality as possible, while also promoting the ethics of his own behavior above all else, right? So, what started out as a tech channel about reviews, as he grew in importance and stature and influence, he, especially this year around the AI hardware startups that he supposedly took down with his reviews, alongside the car reviews that he's done that have influenced companies, I think people are ascribing outsized influence to this guy, and as a result, this in particular undermined a lot of that trust because it spoke to him being out of touch with the expectations.
Aren't you doing the same thing you're accusing others of doing?
Correct.
Right?
And I think that perceived hypocrisy is what is so galling to the people that watch his content, because you put it perfectly. That parasocial relationship that we have, I feel like he has done such a good job of feeling accessible to us as viewers while also being recognized externally as a celebrity, right? So when Marques goes on Wired to do, or GQ to do like the What's in My Bag interview, or he goes on Hot Ones, or he goes on the Today Show or whatever, it's like, oh, my guy is now a real celebrity. But like, I was here from the beginning, and if I'm watching his stuff, it's just me and him. Like we're just chatting, because it's the way that his videos have always looked is primarily Marques standing in front of a camera in a room, fairly static, right? Other than the intros that are extremely highly produced, it almost seems like the videos that he creates could be created by you or I with a single camera and a small team. And that, I think, has created this impression that he is just like us. We could do what he's doing. We could be him if we just did whatever. Like, and I don't think there was any ill will there. It's like he has earned it because he works really hard and he's a nice guy and whatever. And look at this he's not only the most influential tech reviewer in the world, but he's also like a pro ultimate frisbee player, and he's a good podcast host, and he seems like a nice guy. All that has contributed to people just having an outsized expectation on what his business interests should be. You are a YouTuber. What right do you have shilling bad products? But this is not the first time that he or other influential YouTubers have shilled products, right? He is the chief whatever officer at Ridge. He's already put together a bunch of collabs with Adam for shoes. He has said very clearly that like this is something that he wants to get into. He sells merch. He's a business, right? He's a business, and it's his right to build a good or bad product as he sees fit. What I think is interesting here is the vitriol directed at him is far more personal than if a company went out and did this. And it does speak to the fact that influencers like him are in this very awkward position of having to toe the line between being a person and being a business. And we've seen this so many times. Like the backlash to Mr. Beast earlier this year is a great example where, irrespective of like the behavior within his team that is reprehensible and like should have been called out, just the fact that he is like perceived to have been taking it too far on the business side is like, okay, this is a bridge too far. We're gonna claw back some of our support. And I wonder if that is what happened here. And if it could have been anything that he messed up on, right? It didn't have to be a wallpaper
100%.
app.
As you mentioned, like this is not the first like product partnership, I suppose, that he's launched, but I think this is a little bit more, it's not, I guess this is not particularly a partnership, right? He obviously has a team building this app, but it is, hey, all the wallpapers that you like in the reviews that I make, that you watch, that you love, now they can be yours, and then like fine print, for like a fee if you want the good quality version, right? And like I think that was bringing it back to the relationships you have with creators. It is, if you think consciously or not of Marques or other YouTubers or podcasters or influencers as people in your life, right? And I think like more than ever, like those relationships do exist, right? That's why podcasts are so popular. Then it feels like your friend coming up to you and being like, I built this thing, but I want you to pay a lot of money for it. And like, I want you to tell me where your location is when you start the app.
Yeah, I mean, look, like objectively, the pricing model here is bananas. I don't think the value prop associated with the product is good enough. Like all of those things I will agree with. And the fact that like the API was like far too easy to hack so that people could just download all of the wallpapers.
Yeah, someone built an app in allegedly like 25 minutes that has all of the wallpapers for free, which I think is funny, I suppose, or at least amusing, but like I think it's wrong because like at the end of the day, I'm not unwilling to pay for a wallpaper app necessarily. I paid for backdrops.
Same.
I don't think I'm not a recurring subscriber, but I definitely at least paid for like the ad-free version forever ago of that app because practically, if not every review I do has wallpapers from backdrops. I use backdrops like constantly. Wow. It's not a thing that I think people shouldn't pay for. At the end of the day, like a wallpaper for your phone is a piece of art. I know we were joking about orange, but those artists designing that art deserves a cut. But I do think that asking $50 a year as a subscription, especially when 50% of it is not going to those artists, right? Like, is again, it's a tough pill to swallow for people who this app is targeted to, which are not just general users. This app, as Marques said, like is targeted to his audience of enthusiasts who think a lot more about this stuff than just the general like Play Store browser person browsing the Play Store.
Yeah, I think that might have been it, right? There's a disconnect between the desired audience and the fact that the audience that he has is just so enormous that like it took on a life of its own. But I mean, we haven't, other than the fact that he said in a tweet a day afterwards, I hear you, we're working on it, and that he hasn't really said much since, I think is sort of indicative of like the struggle that he's in some way. Like he has no choice but to revisit what is worth pursuing here, because I think ultimately you could get the value proposition of an app like this up to $50 a year. You could. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be all wallpapers, but like the prospect of him, there have been many influencers and YouTubers that have said like, pay me for something now with the promise that I'll give you more down the road. If you subscribe to my Patreon now, it's just a newsletter.
Right, exactly.
But eventually it's going to be a podcast. Eventually it's going to be something else. And I don't know if is he so far beyond that he can't ask for the same thing, or at least if he came out and said, hey, I'd like $50 a year for some of my like ultra loyal subscribers, and I will give you this app as part of it. Like maybe it was just a messaging problem. Maybe it was the fact that like the ad model for the SD downloads was just garbage, and you have to watch 2 30-second ads in the style of like a free-to-play game that really turned people off. Like it's unclear to me why people felt so vitriolic about this, but I think everybody sort of had their own reason for jumping on board the hate train, and I just think that's really unfair given the fact that like this guy, the character MKBHD, I'm not even talking about the person, has done so much good for this industry, and that's it. I don't want to defend his actions here, right? I don't think they're worth defending, but I think he has earned the benefit of the doubt from his millions of fans. And we stan an unproblematic person, like that's really difficult to find. And I just think like, even if you look at him as a celebrity, I don't think that this is worth the response that he's received.
No, I don't. To your point, like, I do think like this could have been very easily either corrected or just like, if he had launched I actually don't, does he have a Patreon? I actually don't know this.
He has a subscription through YouTube, but I'm not sure if it's like actively
a Patreon or a membership of some kind.
Right.
Where, it's $100 a year, but you get 1 or 2 extra bonus videos a month and access to these wallpapers. And like the problem was building it as an app that was completely separate from everything else that he's doing, as opposed to folding it into, hey, I am coming to you to say, I'm an independent content creator. I would like you to either pay, $10 a month or $100 a year, but you will get extra content and access to the wallpapers I use, and bonus, like some of the money that you're paying me will go to support those artists. Not only is this controversy not a thing, I think people are like, wow, that is such a cool thing for Marques to do, to come in here and say, I have this membership for you, and I'm giving some of the money to the creators that I'm showcasing in my videos. And it's essentially the exact same like runaround, but instead of presenting it as a standalone thing, it is a bonus for people who love his content.
Exactly. It's just like flipped on its head a little bit.
And people are willing to pay. Like I've talked about this on the show before, but like I work on separate podcasts on the side, and the money that I make through that is exclusively generated through various Patreons with the producers that I work with. And like people are willing to pay for additional content, right? Like that is, the second you have that relationship, right? Like with a creator, if you come to them and you say, hey, I'm keeping all of this stuff free, but you can get even more stuff that I'm making if you pay for it. A lot of people will do it. They will find, if they have the budget for it, they will find the budget for it, because that is the media ecosystem that we live in today, where like, I would rather, I feel better about paying the $5 or $10 a month to various podcasts and creators through Patreon and other membership products that I pay than I do paying the like whatever I'm paying for Netflix with ads right now, $8 or $9 a month or whatever. Like I feel much better about that, and I'm more willing to sign up for those than I am to sign up for an additional streaming service. And I don't think I'm alone in that. And I think this was just a missed opportunity for him to think about how to launch that sort of thing, as opposed to just making an Android and iOS app.
Yeah. I think there's it lends an air of legitimacy to MKBHD as a business launching an app, standalone,
exactly.
right? As endorsed by him rather than
as
having
opposed
it be
to a creator.
Like it shouldn't have to funnel through the creator. It could just have its own discoverability. And I think there was a sense of hubris there.
Yes.
That I don't think was really like thought very well through. We do have to end. Both of us are like way over.
We're both over.
But this was a great discussion, Will. Thank you. You're going to be off next week. And I'm going to have a very special guest. I cannot reveal their name at the moment, but it will be a fun conversation. Let
me say this. I'm jealous that I'm not going to be on this recording. Yeah. Like I wish I was. I don't wish I was working next week, but I wish I was recording the podcast.
I'm sad you're missing it, but I look forward to you hearing it.
I will. I'm going to listen.
Let us know what you thought about today's episode, podcast@androidpolice.com. And I hope...
One more thing. We will eventually talk about, because I've seen the requests. We have seen the requests. Daniel's foldable situation.
Oh my God. I meant to say something this week. If you're watching the podcast, this is what my Pixel Fold currently looks like. It is. I am a goblin, and I'm actually...
just keep it up. I'm going to describe it to audio listeners. I'm an audio podcast person, so I hate when people do this. I'm going to do it. Daniel is using the standard, like, is it black? It's black, right? Black Google Pixel case, right?
Yes.
Pixel 9 Pro Fold case. And he has put a MagSafe ESR connector on the bottom of it where the coils are.
So it's correctly stationed.
Yes. So that he can use MagSafe adapters, etc., and fix the wireless charging issues with this device. But because of where the coils are, the G on the case is like half covered up.
Correct.
And it just looks aesthetically terrible.
It's terrible. It's this whole situation. This whole situation is awful. But I am so happy I did it because it can finally charge overnight on a MagSafe stand without slipping. And I'm acknowledging my goblin status. So,
I was gonna say, Daniel DM'd me yesterday to say that he had wrote something about his Goblin Pixel 9 Pro Fold.
Yeah, if you're listening to this like later in the week, you'll definitely read it. Okay, that's it. That's the show. Will, have a great vacation. Thank you everybody for listening. You can see the sweat developing on my upper lip right now because it's very hot in my office. So you get that for free. We're not going to charge you for that one. Maybe later. No. Maybe when we launch the Patreon, it'll be AP Podcast After Dark. But until then, save your dollars. That's the show.
That's where you'll get the sci-fi author stories from Daniel. You'll
Talk
get
to
it
you soon.
AP After Dark.
Bye-bye.
Bye.